Hi. January feels like it went by so slow and yet so fast at the same time. I don't know how that's possible, but here we are. I am going to wrap up all of the books that I read in January, and you guys, I've been sticking to what I said that I wanted to do in the beginning of the year, which was to slow down with my reading. I say that every fucking year, okay? But this feels like the first year where I am actually sticking to what I'm saying. I really slowed down with my reading. To give you some perspective, last year in January 2025, I read 29 books. I know. Girl, you don't have to tell me. That is not normal under any circumstance. I don't know what was going on last January, but I was going through it. But I was intentional with the books that I read. I was intentional with how I read them, the time I spent reading them. I actively took notes while I was reading, and this has been the best start to a reading year I have ever had. That being said, I am going to try and stick with this pace that I'm reading at for as long as I possibly can. We'll see how long that takes. I can't promise that I'm going to do a monthly reading wrap up every month. I just so happen to be able to do it this month because in January of 2026, I only read 14 books. Now, I know that's still a lot to many people, but considering where I was last year and at the pace that I usually read, this is a pretty low reading month for me. But despite that, I still found some really great books. Let's get into it. Let's start with stats. You guys know I love my stats. So 14 books read in January. For page number, 29% of the books I read were under 300 pages, 50% were 300 to 499 pages, and 21% were 500 pages and up. My top genres were romance, contemporary, literary, dystopian, and LGBTQIA+. Format, my favorite stat, 29% of the books I read were through audiobook, 36% were through digital from my Kindle, and 36% were print. My average star rating is 3.86. Now, if you round that up, that's a 4-star. I consider that if you round it up. All right, stats are done. Let's get into the books. To kick off the year, the first book that I read in 2026 at the beginning of January actually was an ARC, and that is The Future Saints by Ashley Winstead. Now, I'm a huge fan of Ashley Winstead's mystery thriller books. And when I requested this on NetGalley, I didn't really read the summary because I just saw that it was an Ashley Winstead book. I thought it was going to be a mystery thriller book, and that's definitely not what it was, babe. That's definitely not what it was. Had I known that, would I have requested this? Probably not. To be honest, probably not. This story is about a rock band called The Future Saints. They're turning out to be what people call a washed up band. They had a lot of hype as they were getting discovered and as they got signed to a major label, but they never really lived up to that hype. Recently, the manager of the band has passed away, and each of the band members are taking it very badly, but especially Hannah, who's the lead singer. She is spiraling out of control, handling her grief with drugs and alcohol and acting out. Then you have Theo, who works for the music label that they're under, and he's known as the fixer in the company. He is the guy that they bring in when a band is on the cusp of getting let go from their contract and getting cut from the label because they're doing so horribly. It's his job to either fix them up into shape, get another album out, or let them go. The Future Saints go to a dive bar in their hometown and do a performance, and Theo happens to be there. And at the end, right before they get off stage, they perform a brand new song that Hannah has written, and it's obviously about her grief and losing the manager, and Theo is gobsmacked. Not just from witnessing the band, but from Hannah. It's no surprise, and it's in the summary, that there's a spark between Hannah and Theo, and there does end up being a romance between them. And actually, that was my least favorite part of the book because it just felt so cliche. It felt like Theo was more in love with the idea of Hannah as this sort of misunderstood, broken rock star that he wanted to fix rather than Hannah herself, because she was a fucking train wreck, okay? And I understand it, you know, she's going through her grief, but she was in deep denial about her grief, and it made her treat everyone around her like absolute shit, and it didn't help her being intoxicated for 70% of this book. And also her bandmates and Theo, they're all men around her, and every single one of them enabled her, especially Theo, because he ended up becoming their new manager. He favored her, and he made up every excuse to defend her actions and defend what she was doing to the label, even though it was affecting their reputation as a band and affecting her relationships with the other band members. I will say I adored all of the side characters, the other band members, Hannah's younger sister, Ginny, their sibling relationship. Oh my God, there's a scene at the end of this book that takes place on a beach. And if you're an eldest sister like Hannah, it will rip you apart. Okay, that part of the book I loved. Anything with siblings, it will get me every time. Ashley Winstead is a great writer. She knows how to write unlikable characters that you still want to root for. She knows how to write a great story. There were just a lot of problems with the romance that was so heavily centered in this book that we could have explored other things that were going on in the background a little bit more than the romance. That made me not love this book. It was okay. It's a good time. 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay. A good time. Emotional. The next book that I read, you guys, the second book of 2026, 6 Morning Kisses by Diana Elliott Graham. This is the second book in a duet. In both books, we follow the main character, Arden Bancroft. The first book was her reminiscing about her first love and that relationship. This book is about her and the love of her life and their romance together. And honestly, while both books do explore both those relationships that made an impact on Arden, we also just follow Arden growing up into herself, her womanhood, and her learning to become who she is as a person. She doubts herself. She is, questioning what she's doing with her life. She so easily fell in love before, and then she was scared to fall in love again, and she was guarded. And once she opened up her heart, she loved so big. It was so beautiful to watch her journey from book 1 to book 2. But this book specifically, bitch, this ruined me. When I tell you the last 50 pages of this, I was dry heaving from sobbing so much. And I've never cried for 50 pages straight in a book, ever. I'm not kidding you. I was in shambles. I'll put some pictures here of me crying. I was distraught. I was fighting for my fucking life, you guys. You follow her journey for 2 books, and what happens in the end, I just could not handle it. Oh my God. And not only that, Diana has such beautiful prose, and the way she's able to capture the essence and moments of being a woman is just so fantastic. Oh my God, just so many moments that are hard to put into words. This author does it in such a beautiful way. I have to read you some of the quotes that really stood out to me. Loneliness is the most dangerous type of hunger. It means that anytime anyone shows up with a hot meal, you let them in thinking they will feed whatever is missing from your soul. And sometimes it does for a time, but it also means you're eating a lot of things that maybe you don't really want in the hopes it will sustain you. The tension between us pulses like a living thing, expanding and contracting with each breath. His proximity is a gravitational pull, not the performative lean-in of a desperate courtship, but something more geological, tectonic. Our bodies are land masses, slowly, inexorably converging, carrying millennia of unspoken history. Bitch, what? Yeah, incredible. This was the first 5-star of the year, and it so deserved it. And I actually had this in my 10 before the end last year, and I didn't end up getting to it in 2025. I've been putting this off because I knew it was going to ruin me. And guess what? I was correct. I was right. It destroyed me, but it was worth it. Loved every second of it. 6 Morning Kisses. The next book was an unexpected surprise. I did not think that I would love this book and let it linger in me as long as it has. But that book is Discontent by Beatriz Serrano. This is translated by Mara Faye Letham from Spanish. First of all, this cover, iconic. Yeah, iconic. This book is about Marissa, who on the surface has a very picturesque life. She has a great corporate job. She has a beautiful apartment in Madrid. She has a super hot friends with benefits neighbor, very convenient. And she has everything that anyone in their mid-30s would want, but she's miserable. She is over it, right? She's exhausted. She hates her job. She hates everyone that she works with. And this book is really exploring Marissa's journey into finding the answer to the question, what the fuck is the point of all of this? She wants to know, because this can't be it. This can't be all that her life is for. 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, working, sleeping, eating, same shit, different week. She takes lorazepam to get through the day. She is the definition of fake it to make it. The corporate jargon that she uses in her meetings and her emails to make it seem like she's being productive at work. Girl, been there. Been there. She binges YouTube videos while she's at work. Girl, I mean, she's truly just, she's one of us. She's one of us. There's a quote in this that I think really captures the heart of this book. In her narrative, she says, I couldn't stand the idea of being forced to live that office pantomime in perpetuity just to pay for things like rent or food or a book or a weekend at the beach. I broke down every morning when the alarm beeped because life lived this way seemed like a badly written tragedy, boring and sterile, devoid of fun, and even worse, devoid of content. And so on my way to work, I felt like grabbing strangers by the shoulders and asking them why they weren't feeling like me. I think she just emulates a lot of the things that we feel hidden and are kind of ashamed of to say out loud. She's bright and she's capable, right? Obviously, she wouldn't have risen to the ranks of where she is in her corporate job if she wasn't. But I think she's so jaded and numb to everything that none of it matters to her. In the summary, it says that her success, largely built on lies and work she's stolen from other people, is in danger of being revealed when she's forced to go on her company's team building retreat. That part in the summary, that doesn't happen until about 70 to 80% in. So a majority of this book is just Marissa's mundane life and just trying to get through her day-to-day. The pacing of this book is very slow, but I really loved being in Marissa's mind and her narrative. This is definitely more slice of life and introspective than like a plot heavy book. Although I will say that retreat, when shit happens, babe. The last 30% of this book, I was like, what? There's so many things happening, and then it kind of abruptly ends, and it's an open ending too. If you want a sort of clean conclusion to your books, you should probably avoid this. You won't find it here, but I don't know. I love this book. I still think about it to this day. I rated this 4.25 stars, but the more that I sit with it and think about it, the more I want to rate it 4.5. Maybe by the end of the year, it might even get bumped up to a 5. But for now, I think I maybe want to rate it up to 4.5. That's Discontent. The next book I read was an arc. I read a lot of arcs in January, you guys, so you'll see a lot of arcs mentioned. And it was actually one of my most anticipated releases for this year by an author that I love, and that is I Love You, Don't Die by Jade Song. This author wrote Chlorine, which was their debut novel. Phenomenal. What a great debut. So unfortunately, I did have high hopes. While this didn't disappoint me, I was a bit underwhelmed just because I was expecting a bit more considering how much I loved Chlorine, but this was not a bad book by any means, okay? This book was depressing and bleak as fuck, and I was not expecting it to be as heavy and deep as it ended up being. Our main character, Vicky, has been obsessed with death her entire life. I'm talking, this girl lives above a funeral parlor in Chinatown, and she works for a funeral startup tech company. Yeah, the girl loves death. But yeah, because she's been obsessed with death, it definitely shapes her outlook on relationships, on friendships, on life. She is hesitant to get close to literally anyone but her best friend because she knows she's going to lose them. She dreams of people's death in her life so often that that's why she pulls away from them and keeps them at a distance because she doesn't want that dream to be a reality. She starts dating a couple. Yeah, babe, there's a throuple in this. Kevin and Angela. She meets them on a dating app. Love. The three of them start a relationship. Although, to be honest, in this book, it focused more on the relationship between Angela and Vicky, and Kevin sort of stood there as like a side character. Like, he was not actively involved that much in their relationship. Honestly, why was he there? Because the man was useless. Same could be said for all men. Anyway, their relationship does give her some semblance of purpose, and it affects her relationship with her best friend. It affects her dynamics at work. This newfound relationship definitely shakes things up. There was also a lot of repetitiveness in the writing of this book. However, I think because you're in the mind of Vicky, who is in a constant spiral, it makes sense that you're following her cyclical thoughts and rambling on throughout this book. The ending, I couldn't have predicted that from a mile away. Jade Song does know how to bamboozle you into an ending that will leave you gutted, because I was shocked. Truly, I was taken aback. Ultimately, I rated this 3.75 stars. I think this does have Jade's really strong emotional writing. I didn't love this as much as Chlorine, but not a bad book. Still recommend. That's I Love You, Don't Die. Next, I listened to the audiobook of My Feral Romance by Sonia Odette. And this book is the second book in the Fae Flings and Corset Strings series, which is a historical romantasy series that takes place in sort of like a Regency era. And there's a human world and a Fae world. You have all these magical creatures, and it's definitely more cozy romantasy. The first book was called, what is the first book? The first book is A Rivalry of Hearts. This book follows Monty and Daphne, who are the best friends of the couple from the first book. She's a shapeshifter, she's an artist, and she struggles with drawing men. And so she enlists his help for him to be the model so she can better her illustrations, because she's going to be doing the covers for romance books. And Monty writes a romance advice column. He needs to find a guinea pig to experiment all of the advice that he's giving out to prove that there is a success rate in the advice that he's giving in order to continue working there. And so they form this sort of arrangement for them to help each other, and they end up falling in love. I love the banter between these two. Monty is a very big flirt. She's very guarded. She's also a shapeshifter, so she's not used to being in a human form and not used to all the different experiences that humans have. So she does come off there a little bit naive and innocent at times. I love that he was always very considerate of her and her experiences, and it was just really sweet. I do feel like this was way longer than this needed to be. Truly, there were a lot of things that could have been edited out, cut out, that I don't really feel added to the character development or the plot. And there were some parts that did drag on, but ultimately I still rated this. What did I rate this? I still rated it 3.5 stars. Enjoyed it. I had a really great time. I love this way more than I loved the first book. So if you're looking for a cozy romantasy with some fae, read this, My Fatal Romance. The next book I read was Brick Makers by Selva Almada, translated from Spanish by Annie McDermott. This is a book that I found at the library. When I read the back summary of it, it kind of alluded to the book being a queer Romeo and Juliet. That's what I got from the summary. This book is about two families. The patriarchs of the family, the fathers, are both in the brick making business. This takes place in rural Argentina, and they run opposing brick making businesses. Now, these two fathers have had hostility and animosity against each other for years. This book explores the way that toxic masculinity affects the people around them and how it trickles down into their children, specifically their sons. However, because their sons go to the same school, and because both families are known for having such a tumultuous relationship with each other, they're always somehow in each other's orbit, and two of the sons end up falling in love or having a relationship, and it has dire consequences. I mean, it's compared to Romeo and Juliet, so you can kind of assume where it's going. Actually, in the summary, it does state that this book starts with both of the eldest sons in the family laying in the grass, dying. They are taking their last breaths, and as they are, we flash back into both of their memories and moments in their life that showcase the relationship with their fathers, how that has shaped who they are and who have they become, and how it leads up to their ultimate demise. The book is told in different POVs too, so you get bits and pieces of not just the sons, but the fathers and the mothers, the wives, how they handle this. And it really does capture how toxic masculinity is seeped into bloodlines. Every man in this book embodies ego, pride, shame, violence, and really how young men in certain cultures are hindered from being able to express any emotion at all, or any emotional maturity to break down those thick walls of masculinity that make up someone's manhood. There's this one quote at the beginning of the book that goes, "That's how it had been between them since Pajarito first learned to stand. Maybe they were two alike and the house didn't have space for the pair of them." Instead of being proud of his strapping young son, Tamai was consumed by jealousy and rage. The boy never did as he was told, and worse, his mother always took his side. And I definitely think that captures exactly how these types of relationships in family dynamics can really shape a person's future, honestly. That was the first 70% of the book. The last 30%, that's when we kind of got the hints of the romance between two of the sons. I think if we had gotten bits and pieces of that relationship throughout the book, the ending would have had a bigger impact on me and it would have landed more emotionally. But because we didn't really see any of that up until the last 30% of the book. It was sad, yes, but I didn't really have any emotional stake invested into them, you know? A bit disappointing in that portion of it, but I've never read a book that explored that much toxic masculinity. I don't think ever, truly. So I did appreciate the book for what it gave me, but I was expecting something a bit different. Ultimately, I rated it 3.5 stars. So yeah, that was Brickmakers. The next book I'm gonna go over pretty briefly because at this point it's the 4th book in a series. But I read another arc, and that was The Halifax Hellions by Alexandra Vasti. I gave this book 3.75 out of 5 stars. And this actually was a combination of 2 novellas in one, and we follow 2 sisters and their romance. Like I said, this is the 4th book in a series, and it's a historical romance series. Each book follows different couples, and I read all the books in the series so far, and I love it. It's such a good, cozy, historical romance series with really fun characters, loving romances, and really chaotic situations that these characters get themselves in, especially for this time period. But I love it. It's so fun. This one, like I said, follows 2 twins and their romances. There's 2 separate novellas. I do feel like one novella was way longer than the other, and those characters felt more fleshed out, and we got more time with them and more character development, more spicy scenes in the romance. And the other novella was so short compared to it, and I felt like we didn't really get as much as I wish we could have from that novella. But I still had a great time. If you're looking for a historical romance series to binge, I highly recommend this one. It's so good. Okay. The next book that I read was a reread for a book club, and this book club is Fat's book club. I will link her down below. She is amazing. I love Fats. She is one of my favorite booktubers. If you want to join her book club, it's on Fable, and we had a great time discussing the book today. The book itself, girl, again, this was a reread, so I have already been through this once, and I can't believe I put myself through it twice. But that was Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica. If you don't know what this book is about, you must be living under a rock at this point. This is set in a dystopian world where we don't have any animals anymore, and now we are eating special meat. I don't know why, but the first time I read this book, I must have flown through it and just jumped to the next book, not even given this a second thought, because this second time reading it, I was disgusted and disturbed to a different level. I don't remember feeling that way the first time I read this. So I don't know why the second time hit so differently for me and why everything felt more visceral in this reread. I couldn't believe some of the things that I was reading, and I've already read this. I don't know how that's possible. I think my brain must have blocked this completely out after the first time I read this, but holy shit, this was disgusting, horrifying. It did do what it intended to do, which was make me want to actually vomit. Yeah, this was horror, babe. This is a book that truly shows you what human beings are capable of. No one's being possessed by a demon that's making them do bad things. There are no ghosts in this. No, the pure evil in this book stems from humans. Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah, this was, I don't know what was going on with this reread, but I could only take a couple chapters at a time. Like, I couldn't sit down and read more than 2 or 3 chapters because I would feel physically ill. The first time I read this, I rated it 4 stars. The second time I rated it 3.75 stars, just because there were some things that happened that I didn't really feel, and some of the people in the book club too, didn't really feel like it served a purpose. Yeah, this was a tough reread, but it happened. I went through this for a second time. I will never, ever read this book ever again. This will be my last time reading this book. Tender is the Flesh. All right, next we have the second 5-star read of the year, and that goes to Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. I'm sure you've seen this gaining some popularity. People are starting to speak up about this and believe the hype. This book was phenomenal, okay? It's a dystopian sci-fi romance, and you are following a group of characters that are all fighting a very, very oppressive system. The main romance is between Shadira, who is a rebel mercenary, and Grayson, who is the heir to the president of this oppressive system. So they are literally on opposite sides of this war. Through some convoluted shit, these two end up having to be in an arranged marriage. And when I tell you that this was true enemies to lovers, baby, these two were actively trying to kill each other for 50% of the book. They put the enemies in enemies, okay? Yes, this was true enemy. True enemies, okay? Not that hate to love. Oh my God, I hate you, but you're so hot. No, it literally on site with these two. So I love that about this book. You don't just follow these two, you follow a handful of other characters. You follow Grayson's sister, Grayson's best friend, Shadira's friends in the rebellion, and you follow how all of these characters have a working part in taking down the system. This was dark, dystopian, and unfortunately, it mirrored a lot of what is going on in our political climate today. Unfortunately. Yeah, there are themes of, let me just read it off to you. Totalitarianism, capitalism, political corruption, misogyny, classism, elitism, the female rage in this. God, the women in this book were truly outshined everything else. They were resilient in every way. They were determined to put a stop to the corrupt system, and they fought back, sometimes with brutal force, sometimes with patience and strategy. The women in this, truly iconic. Now, the last 30% of this book, okay? The amount of twists and turns, the secrets revealed, I was speechless. I was gagged, gooped, bamboozled, hoodwinked, led astray, gobsmacked. Every time I thought that this was going to happen, every time I thought I knew a character, this author, she said, you really thought. You really thought. She pulled the rug out from underneath me multiple times, bitch. I was free falling into the abyss. This author was laughing at my face because I really thought I knew what was going to happen. No, none of that happened. I was gutted at what happened at the end. I'm so excited for book 2. Holy shit, if you have not picked this up, please read it. Please, please, please read it. Easy 5 stars. I love this. I love the writing. I love the characterization. I love the themes. Daggermouth. This is it, babe. This is it. Okay, next I listened to the audiobook of Hills of Shivers and Shadows by Pam Godwin. This is the first book in a trilogy. This is dark romance. I think Pam Godwin only writes dark romance. I rated this 3 stars, okay? I mean, I made it through this book, bitch. This was a 20-hour audiobook. You guys know me. I love dark romance, right? Usually with a dark romance, there's a message behind it. There's a reason behind it. There was no purpose for this, in my opinion. I didn't see a single shred of reason as to why this book exists or why these characters needed to go through what they were going through. Basically, in this book, you have Frankie. She's a trauma nurse. She is married to this gazillionaire. She lives on an island, like they have their own island. She gets kidnapped. Could you really say kidnapped when she's like almost 30? She gets taken by this man and he schleps her all the way to his isolated cabin in the wilderness of Canada or Alaska. She doesn't even know. She has no idea where she is. So I don't know where she is. And he forces her to live there with his 3 sons. And it's so convoluted why they're trapped there, what they're doing there, how they're living there. I don't know the purpose of it. The thing is, I wanted to know what was going to happen next. The characters were so dynamic. One of the characters was really funny and witty. The other character was very brooding. And then there was another character that was territorial and very lumberjack. Like, they were all such distinct characters, and that's what made me want to keep going, because I love their dynamics together. I did not understand the romance in this or the message behind it. I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I didn't see a purpose for it, and I will not be continuing with the series. As much as the ending left on a cliffhanger, I didn't care. I didn't care. Yeah, once it got to like the 65% mark, I was like, oh, this is what's going on? No. Girl, no. There's no reason for this. Yeah. That's Hills of Shivers and Shadows. Oof. Okay, the next book is another audiobook, and it is an ALC, so it's an ARC. I am the outlier in this opinion because this has an insane amount of high ratings on Goodreads. But that's The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. This is a highly anticipated fantasy that's coming out. Everyone is talking about it. I rated it 2.75 stars. Let me start off by saying that this is about the story of the Beast of Javaden, and I didn't know a single goddamn thing about that story. I don't know anything about that myth or that lore, but the author researched it to where I didn't really need to know prior knowledge because they explained what happens. The author did their research and the writing was really great. I love the writing of this. I would say it's similar to the nitty grittiness of Joe Abercrombie's writing with a mix of T. Kingfisher's humor, if that makes any sense to you. If you've read either of those authors, that's how this read to me. And a lot of people also compared it to Jay Kristoff's writing. I've never read anything by Jay Kristoff, but if that gives you an idea, a lot of people compared it to that. I think the biggest lack of enjoyment for me came from the fact that I did read this as an audiobook. I think had I read it physically while listening to the audiobook, I would have enjoyed it more, because with the audiobook, it really was the narration of it. The structure of the book too was not linear. You're jumping timelines because the main character it's a story within a story. He's telling a story of how he got to where he is. So you're jumping timelines. There are multiple POVs. In the middle of a good subplot, it'll jump to something else. There are fourth wall breaks with modern language used in it. This was all over the place for me in terms of only listening to an audiobook. And because of that, it took me out of the story a lot. Also, because the character was sort of telling his own story, anytime that there was a scene, like an action scene and his life was in danger, I just thought, well, you're alive to tell the tale. So what do I really care about this? You know? And yeah, I just felt like, I don't know, because of the kind of humor that these characters had about their situations and other characters, given the plot and what they were trying to do, it felt like they weren't really taking it seriously, so I wasn't taking them seriously. That's just how I felt. So yeah, this one didn't quite work for me. Yeah, 2.75 stars on this one. Also, I will say there was some queer relationship representation, which I loved because that hardly ever happens in high epic fantasies, so I really enjoyed that. So obviously it is the next day. My camera, aka my phone, died right after that last clip. Thank God I finished what I needed to say about the Red Winter before it died. I still have 3 books to get through. Let's go through them. The next book that I read in January was Real by Kennedy Ryan. What can I really fucking say? You know, that hasn't been said already. One thing about Kennedy Ryan, she is a master at her craft. Her romance books, honestly, some of the best that are out there right now. I think she is one of the most talented romance writers that we have in our generation. I feel like every time I want to read one of her books, I have to emotionally and mentally prepare myself because I know she's gonna put me through it. And she did. She put me through it in this one. In this book, we have the romance between Neva and Cannon. Neva is currently an understudy for a really big Broadway show, and the main lead for the role that she is an understudy for ends up going on vacation, and so now she gets to be the lead for the first time on Broadway, and this is her big break. And it just so happens that Cannon, who is a huge world-famous director, is watching the Broadway show with one of his good friends, Monk. Cannon has been looking for the lead actress for a new biopic that he is directing about a jazz singer who's not really well known, and he wants to share her story with the world. He has been looking for the lead actress for months, and he hasn't been able to find the perfect person to play the part. And then at that show, when he watches Neva perform, it like instantly clicks and he goes, that is my lead actress. The story goes on. Neva gets the lead part for his new biopic, and it is their romance. It is forbidden because he is the director and she is the main actress, and he's been in a relationship with an actress that had a part in his movie before, and it did not work out well. So he does not want to repeat that, especially because there's a studio funding this movie, and if anything goes wrong, they'll take the funding away. And so he really wants to make sure that they keep things professional, but these two cannot deny the chemistry. They cannot deny their feelings for each other, and obviously drama happens. But like I said, Kennedy always manages to put the most amount of emotional depth you can possibly put into a book, into a romance book, and she does it so flawlessly. You really feel for all of her characters, what they're going through, their inner turmoil. One of the main characters has a chronic illness, so there's that representation in this, and it's so beautiful to see how unconditional the love is between these two. It's too much. I can't. Like I said, I always have to prepare myself emotionally and mentally when I read one of her books because I know that she is just going to tug at every one of my heartstrings. Neva and Canon, their love was so potent. They had the most unconditional love for each other. They truly were there for each other's highs and lows. Talk about ride or dies. The movie itself, too, that they are working, there are parts of it where you actually see the script of the movie. Kennedy, get into screenwriting, girl. What's going on? I love that she included that in the actual story because it added more depth to the characters, because some of what was happening in the movie was almost reflecting what was going on in Neva and Kanan's real life. I also listened to the audiobook while I read this physically. The audiobook, you guys, a whole ass production. Like I said, this biopic is about a jazz singer, and there is an original song part of the script, and in the audiobook there's an actual singer that performs the song. Gagged. I was gagged. Where is the Grammy Award for this audiobook? Where is the Golden Globe? Where's the Oscar? Because these narrators gave the performance of their life, babe. They sure did. So if you're gonna read this, I highly, highly, highly recommend the audiobook. It was such a fantastic production. Oh my God, I was obsessed. Yeah, I gave this 4.5 stars. Kennedy Ryan does it again. Phenomenal book. I highly recommend this romance that is real. Okay, the next book that I read was another arc. And sorry to say, but yet again, I am the outlier in this opinion. I listened to the ALC audiobook of The Story Might Save Your Life by Tiffany Crum. This comes out on March 10th, and this is a mystery thriller book about two best friends that have a podcast. It's not really a true crime podcast. What they do is they go through dangerous scenarios and then they each sort of explain how they would survive that scenario. This book has an insane amount of 4 and 5 star reviews on Goodreads. And I'm wondering if we all read the same book. Like, truly, I'm wondering. It seems to me what everyone is rating this so highly for is the romance. And listen, I just literally reviewed a romance book for you guys. I love romance. You know that. You know that. But I didn't go into this for a romance. I went into this for a mystery thriller. So, this is another book where the romance, to me, this isn't a romance book. The first 50% of this book had me hooked. So we follow Benny and Joy, who, again, best friends. They've been best friends for years now. They're older, they have different spouses, but they started a podcast together. Joy's husband, Xander, works on the podcast as well. They have a whole recording studio in a shed behind Joy's house. So it's this huge business that they have. One night, Benny goes over to Joy's house to record an episode, and the windows are all broken. There's furniture everywhere, and Joy and Xander are missing. He doesn't know where they are. He can't find them. No one else knows where they are. And so thus begins, I think, a 7 or 8 day hunt to find her and Xander. We follow 2 timelines. In the present, Benny is trying to find Joy and Xander, talking to everyone, their neighbors, and finding out clues. And then we follow Joy's perspective from the past as she's telling the story of how she met Benny, how they become close friends, how she met Xander, how that affected their friendship. Eventually, they all converge into one seamless timeline around the 50 to 60%. And that was when I kind of started not to care once I realized what was going on. I will say there was a lot of drama, very messy drama along the way, and I ate that up. You guys know me. I love the drama. I love the mess. So I was eating this up for the first 50%. I could not stop listening. I think I listened to the first half of this audiobook in a day, and I did really enjoy the structure of the different timelines. This is one audiobook where it did work for me. But there were some really heavy themes that were explored, especially from Joy's perspective and what she was going through, that I feel like weren't explained enough and explored deep enough for me to really feel the impact of it, because there was also so much going on Benny's side as the layers of what happened to them started unraveling. It was like we had Benny that was in like a chaotic, manic state trying to figure out everything. He's making the craziest decisions. And then we had Joy's perspective, and it started to get very depressing and deep and heavy. And so it was these two opposite ends of what was going on. And I felt like I was getting whiplash going from one to the next. I didn't really particularly like that because it felt like I was listening to two different stories. As Benny is trying to unravel everything, him and his group of friends and his sister are able to go in and out of Joy and Xander's house all willy-nilly. And I'm a little bit confused because if they're missing, is that not an active crime scene? I guess not crime scene, but wouldn't that be a place that's under investigation? So how are they just able to go in and out, touch evidence? And that just made no sense to me. When we get to the reveal, girl, what? You're telling me that the reveal has to do with political corruption and people taking advantage of their seat in power? Okay. Only certain people can get away with that. And I think we know who I'm talking about. I rated this 2.75 stars. Like I said, for the first 50% of it, I was invested. So if this author writes something in the future, don't come for me if I end up reading it. So yeah, that is This Story Might Save Your Life. Okay. I need a moment to gather myself, y'all. Let me gather myself. Let me gather myself. Because the last book that I read in January was my most anticipated release of the entire year. And that is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. I know. I cannot believe I got the arc, you guys. Genuinely shocked, bamboozled. Thank you, NetGalley. Thank you, Orbit. Thank you, Fonda Lee, for writing this book. This was a masterpiece. Right now, I can tell you it was 5 out of 5 stars. And that's not because I'm biased towards her or anything. This was just so fantastically written. And no one can do it like her. No one's doing it like her. I swear to God. This actually isn't fantasy. This is sci-fi, babe. This is sci-fi. The blurb is that this is a standalone space opera where corporate samurai fight beneath merciless stars and death is always a mere breath away. 100% that's exactly what it is. So we follow Isako, who is a corporate samurai, technically an assassin, almost like a bounty hunter. So we are on the planet of Akilo. And from what I gathered, the founders of Akilo were sent over to this planet as an experiment to see if life could live on a separate planet other than Earth. Earth cut communication with them centuries ago. And so now Akilo is surviving on its own. It is a very functioning society, schools, and they have businesses, and they like it's basically like Earth. However, they are within this little dome because the weather conditions outside of the dome that they live in, freezing cold temperatures, no oxygen, and the second you step out, you die. Basically. Isako is a super talented, legendary swordsman, and she's been working with her client for years and years and years. And then he unexpectedly retires unbeknownst to her. He did not tell her of his plans at all. And then she ends up getting a contract with his rival. So she has to go on one last mission before she can retire. This mission ends up not being at all what she expected, and it ends up unraveling all of these secrets that the higher ups that are in charge of the planet and the society are hiding from everyone. There's corporate espionage and almost like secret forces that she has to go up against. And God, this was so good. What I loved also was that Isako was such a badass character to follow, but she was older. She was in her 50s. And I love an older, mature character that acted mature, that acted older, that made decisions with logic and reasoning, okay? She actually reminded me of the main character from Blood Over Bright Haven because, like I said, she's older, so she's really set in her beliefs and really stood by them and almost judged the world and other characters because their actions were against everything that she believed in. But once she started unraveling all of these secrets and things started coming out and found out truths about her beliefs that went against everything that she thought she knew, she definitely changed her perspective and started making moves in a completely different way. And I love that about her. I love that we followed an older character who was more established. You know, because she's older, she talks about how she can't keep up with the fights as much as she used to be able to. She gets knee pain, she gets joint pains. Like she just felt like a real character. And that's the one thing I love about Fonda Lee's books and her characters, is that they feel like real people. They feel like everything they're going through are true experiences, you know? And what can I say? There were twists and turns that I was not expecting. Okay, I was gagged. I love the friendships that she had. She has a daughter, so she's also thinking about motherhood and how this is going to affect her daughter and what the future is going to look like for her daughter. And the fact that Fonda Lee was able to create an entire planet with its own functioning society, and all of it lives in one standalone book. Like I said, this was a 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend that when this comes out for you to read it, because it was so fantastic. Fonda Lee does it again. My queen does it again. Yes, she does. And this was just so incredible. I loved every page of this. And every page was intentional. Every word was intentional. Everything that happened had a part to play in the end. The way that the story weaves together, phenomenal. That was The Last Contract of Isako. Okay, those are all the books that I read in January. I had such a fantastic reading month, and what a great way to start off the year. Let me know what you guys read in January down below, or if you are excited for any of the books that I mentioned. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.